All right. Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Nice to see
My
you.
pleasure.
So, you're a former newspaper and TV reporter. You're not doing that anymore, right?
Right now, I'm in public relations, but I started out my career as a newspaper reporter in the Chicago suburbs and then moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, because I always wanted to live out west and got a job with a TV station out there. So
Okay.
those are some pretty exciting times.
When you were doing your TV reporting, were you sent out to locations and you'd be the one standing in front of the camera with the mic because there was some disaster or,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Although I didn't get a lot of the big stories, I mostly got some of the feature stories, like the balloon fest, the fiesta, and the wild Mustang roundup, and kind of the fun stories like that. I was a lot younger and looked very young for my age, so I think they thought I was more adapted to the feature stories.
Okay. They didn't want to have this attractive woman doing these horrible, awful stories. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're in PR, Schaumburg Library. Why do I know that library? Is that a very famous
Um,
library?
it's the second largest library in the state of Illinois. So it's really big, and we put out just a ton of great programs every month for all ages. And so we're really kind of a big part of the community. It's a great library.
Okay, so libraries have not, I haven't been to a library in years, but they have not been decimated by everything going online and ebooks, and they're still
No,
viable, yeah.
honestly, libraries are thriving because they provide that service for people. The audiobooks and the ebooks. A lot of libraries have become more like community centers where they have big open areas where people can meet and have, discussions and do homework projects together. And, there's like some entertainment programs and, of course, educational programs. So I think they're really changing as the world changes.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm also happy to hear that people still prefer or still like real books.
Yes, a lot of people do,
Yeah,
really.
I mean, the literary world has not been quite as hard hit as, say, the music industry, where people really don't buy vinyl records anymore, not in great numbers like they used to. But people still do buy real books in great numbers.
Yes, yeah, they do. And that's something that authors like me are pretty happy about because, we still have a way of getting our stories out there to the world. People still want stories. They still want a way to escape, I think, from all of our realities that we're dealing with.
Well, there is something kind of nice about a real book. Number one, you don't need any apparatus to read it. You don't need even electricity. If the power goes out, you can light a candle and still read a book.
That's right.
But with an ebook, you're kind of martyred to your pad or your phone or your computer in order to read
That's
it.
true.
Yeah.
But I think there's pros and cons to ease. People like to be able to just bring a tablet or phone with them sometimes on trips and they can have as many books as they want on there, whereas you don't want to put 5 books in your suitcase. So it just depends on your preference, I think.
Well, there is that. I mean, I can remember as a college student having to lug crates of vinyl records up flights of stairs, moving from one apartment to another. And
Yes,
now all of that music fits in my phone. So
it's
there,
amazing.
yeah, there is that. Most definitely. So you've got a book that you're promoting right now called Signs in the Dark,
Yes,
and you want to hold it up?
I do. This is it, Signs in the Dark. It's a young adult novel. It's told in alternating chapters from the perspective of the two characters that you see on the cover, Haley and Nathan. Basically, what happens is in the very first chapter, Haley gets kidnapped, and Haley she's really brilliant and beautiful, and she's also deaf. She's very independent, fiercely independent, and she gets kidnapped in an alley while she's waiting because she had gotten a message from Nathan that he wanted to meet her in the alley just to talk to her real quick. But instead of Nathan, this van pulls up and she gets grabbed, and she has no idea why. She's not from a rich family. She can't imagine why anybody would kidnap her. She's wondering if Nathan had something to do with it. Meanwhile, Nathan, who just had made a first date with Haley and was excited to be going out with her, he becomes a prime suspect, and gets interviewed by the FBI. All of that happens in the first and second chapter. So the rest of the book is told from Haley's perspective as she's being held captive, and Nathan, who is trying to find her.
Now, I assume that Nathan is denying any involvement in the kidnapping through this.
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes. So,
but we as the readers don't know for sure if.
no, I think it's pretty clear that he didn't have anything to do with it. You can
Okay,
tell. I mean, that's not really a spoiler, so I'll go ahead and say that. Um, but of course, the FBI doesn't know that, and they're still considering him a suspect, and he's trying to not only clear his name, but more importantly, find Haley.
I want to ask you something about the cover, if you don't mind. Where do you get the people to pose on the cover?
Oh, as an author, I don't get the people or the covers. The publishing house has an artist, a cover artist, who has access to all kinds of artwork that he or she will then manipulate into the cover.
Oh, so those are just models?
Yes,
Oh, I
yes.
see. Okay. All right. No, I didn't know. I didn't know how people made the covers for those. If you're self-published, though, you've got to do all that yourself, right?
I think a lot of self-published authors hire somebody to make their covers. Some of them do it themselves, though, but I think most of them hire somebody.
You kind of need the talent to be able to do that, I think.
Yeah, you got to
Yeah,
know what you're doing to
right.
make it look good. But there's plenty of artists out there who do book covers.
So how many books have you written now?
I've written 5, and most of them are young adult novels. Signs in the Dark is my latest, but I had these two come out, Healer and Shards of Light, which Healer is the first, and then Shards of Light is the sequel. And that was recently picked up by an international publisher. And the funny thing is now, I showed you these other two covers. So the international publisher changed the covers and entirely. So this is
Oh,
what those two books look like in the international market.
well, that's
So that was
interesting.
kind of cool.
I suppose that's all right. It would seem to me, though, that's almost like changing your logo, though, isn't it?
Oh no, it's fine. As long as my title and my name is on there, and they didn't change the story, it's perfectly fine.
So it's okay. The cover can be almost anything, really, right? As long as it's your name and
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, maybe different covers will attract different people. So it's hard to say what people like, but I was okay with it. I thought as long as they were attractive covers, that was fine.
that's interesting. So with that book, do you know, is there more than just 2 covers? Like if they would change it for every regional area that you get
Oh,
or different
no, they
publishers? No?
just, yeah, no. So in the US, it's the blue covers, and then in whatever other countries this international publisher is, marketing in, it's the second set that I showed you, the gold covers.
Okay. What are the genres that these books are in?
Those are all young adult novels, and Healer and Shards of Light are actually Christian fiction. So in Healer, I have my main character has discovers suddenly that she has the spiritual gift of healing, and it just turns her world inside out, and it leads into a lot of scenarios, some of them dangerous. It impacts her relationship with her friends and her boyfriend. She has to keep it a secret from everybody because obviously, if people discovered that you could heal, you can imagine your whole life would be just constantly on the run from everybody pursuing you. So there's a lot of action actually in the books and some romance, touches of humor. I like to keep my books at kind of a quicker pace because I like reading that way, and I think that with the young adult market, you need to really make sure that you're capturing someone's attention in a pretty quick pace so they don't get bored.
Let me ask you something about the Christian genre. When a
Okay.
book is categorized in the Christian genre, does that mean that the characters are of the Christian faith, or the story has some elements of biblical reference, or how is that determined?
That is a really good question. And the answer is that yes, it has what we call a Christian worldview. Some of them are just clean fiction. So, for example, the latest one, Signs in the Dark, is not Christian fiction, although my publisher does publish Christian fiction books. But it's clean fiction because, as a Christian, that's what I want to put out into the world is clean fiction. So there's no graphic sex or swear words, but there certainly is, like I said, romance and danger and bad guys and that sort of thing. The Christian fiction is definitely has characters who are Christian, but not all of them. And it's very important, especially as a young adult author, not to make them preachy, I would say. I mean, these are just normal human beings, normal teenagers with all the normal emotions and feelings and challenges of any other teenager. And they just happen to be Christian, but that's not constantly mentioned or talked about.
So it's just sort of matter of fact rather than the point of the book.
Yeah, exactly. But in Healer, it's a little bit more of a issue because her healing power comes from God.
So when you first started as an author, did you self-publish first, or did you go straight to the traditional publishing route?
I just wanted to be traditionally published. That was my goal. And it took a long time and a lot of heartache and frustration and patience. It is not an easy road for most of us. I mean, I guess there are some instant success stories, but I don't know of any of them. And I just kept hanging in there and pitching my manuscripts to agents and publishers. And eventually I got accepted, and it kind of went pretty well from there. So I have had 4 books out in 4 years. And that's been a lot of work and a lot of craziness, but really great too.
Well, that is very inspirational, because many of the authors that I've had on this show have said that they didn't even get looked at by a traditional publisher until they had a following built on their own. Like the traditional publishers wouldn't even take them if they were starting from zero.
Oh, well, I mean, I've heard stories like that too. But it worked out differently for me. And I know some other people like me who just kept at it and kept like going to conferences and pitching their manuscript to editors and agents, and finally got accepted. There are definitely publishing houses out there that will take on somebody that has not been previously published if they really like the manuscript. If you have what they call a platform, some sort of a following. Like I've been a presenter for a long time. I do travel presentations and I do writing workshops. I also have a lot of a column in the newspaper, that sort of thing. So I think that between my social media presence and my platform and the fact that they liked my manuscripts, that I have spent decades as an editor and writer, professionally in public relations, that all kind of was an advantage to getting a manuscript accepted.
I think the fact that you were also a newspaper and journalist, and so you probably were a pretty good writer to start out with.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
That did help a lot. It's a very different kind of writing than fiction, of course, but still it helps a lot with knowing sentence structure and, grammar and punctuation and all of that. But of course, with fiction, you've also got so many other things to consider, like imagery and plot and twists and dialogue and, on and on.
Okay, last question, and then we kind of have to wrap this up. Since you've done both styles of writing, journalism, nonfiction type writing, and fiction writing, it would be my opinion that fiction writing would be more of a right brain process, because there's a lot more creativity involved.
Absolutely.
rather than just writing a news report, which is pretty left brain. You kind of just write down what you saw, what you're supposed to be telling them, whatever information. Did you have
Yes.
difficulty switching from one to the other when you got started writing fiction?
Yes, I had a lot to learn as a fiction writer. I really did. And, of course, when you first start out and you write something and you think it's really good, and your friends and family tell you that it's really good, and you try, submitting it to an editor. And anyway, you just learn pretty quickly that you still have a lot to learn. And I just did. I kept learning. I just kept getting better, attending conferences and classes, and getting my materials, my manuscripts critiqued, and learning from those critiques and learning from other authors that I thought were really good. Reading is one of the best ways to learn how to write.
I will agree with that, definitely. I think the more you read, the more it sinks in, and all of that information gets in the blender in your head. And then when it's time for you to output something, you've got a lot of sort of fodder in your head to work with, I think.
The one thing that was different for me was a few months ago, I came out with Surviving Carmelita, and this is my first women's fiction. So it's a little bit different than writing for young adults. And I had a lot of fun with that, with kind of doing it a little bit differently.
Well, we do have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yes, I do. It is SusanMiura.com. SusanMiura.com.
Okay, and there's links to your books and your social media, everything there on the website?
Everything's on there, yes.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much for coming on the show. It was nice meeting you, nice talking to you. Best of luck with the book.